The TRN V10 Pro has been always in my ears for more than 3 weeks now, with more than 24 hours of total listening time. My main sources are the ROG Phone 8's audio jack and the Arturia MiniFuse 1 interface. I have paired the TRN V10 Pro with two new SNS ear tips and the CVJ LS200 cable. If I had started my IEM journey with these, I would have stopped. I dare say, the budget endgame is the TRN V10 Pro. This IEM is unbeatable, especially at its price of $16 US. So far, I have not heard an IEM below $20 US sound this good, or at least have this similar sound signature. Allow me to make this statement. It's like the 7Hz Sonos and HZ Sound Hard Mirror's child. And I fear that I would not be able to take these out of my ears for other IEMs to review. This review has been long overdue, but listening to the V10 Pro has been way too enjoyable. I'll admit, I will be overhyping these, but what is not hype is the packaging. Let's set it straight. This is a budget IEM, but I've seen better stock cables at this price range. Even the ubiquitous KZ cable is far better than this. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to produce this rubber band of a cable. Even though it isn't worse at being entangled, the microphonics is really bad. It's so cheap, thin, and somehow stretchy and bouncy. This is a cable that should be thrown away immediately. That's why I switched to CVJ's LS200 cable, which saved the experience. At least, the saving grace of the packaging, other than the IEM itself, is the one pair of TRN medium tips, which is one of my favorite tips. The V10 Pro feels lightweight, small, and decently comfortable. Despite housing one 10mm beryllium-plated and one 6mm titanium-plated dynamic drivers and two 30095 balanced armature drivers. I suspect that the metal-looking faceplate is only chrome, though I can't confirm. But I don't put value in metal shells, but budget IEMs recently, at the same price as the V10 Pro or lower, offer full metal shells. Though, in terms of internals, the V10 Pro is the cheapest, if not one of the cheapest, hybrid with multiple dynamic drivers and balanced armatures. Performance value is prioritized over premium feeling shells, which, in my opinion, is a good decision. As mentioned, the V10 Pro is quite comfortable to wear, but I sometimes do need to readjust the seal. Using the medium TRN T-tips, which came installed with the IEM, solved that sealing issue for me. The shell size is quite small and only barely sticks out of the ears compared to other hybrid sets I've tried. It actually fits quite flat. I did not feel fatigue or pressure buildup and did not once think of removing these from my ears. But honestly, it's quite impressive that they have crammed these drivers into the size of a shell. But it still does feel invasive. Another thing to add is the metal filter and the location of the balance armatures. For those who are concerned, both balance armatures are located at the nozzle. On the other hand, I was pleasantly surprised that the V10 Pro used metal filters instead of the typical paper mesh filters, which get dirty easily. Though, this might not matter to anyone, but I thought it was a good thing to mention. Finally, the sound! Despite having multiple, more expensive Chi-Fi IEMs, I could not stop myself from missing and reaching out for the V10 Pro, both for music and gaming. Simply, the V10 Pro's can be described in one word: irresistible. The V10 Pro provides great depth, but average width due to its boomy mid-bass, which does bleed into the mid-range quite a bit. In my opinion, the bass bleed is tastefully done, providing husk and body to the vocals. The proximity effect is added or amplified depending on the singer's voice and recording, which might be a negative aspect for some. I enjoy the extra body, but I wished it would have been pulled back for a cleaner sounding replay. There were many occasions where I wished vocals sounded just a little thin, especially for male vocals, or recordings with excessive proximity effect. Otherwise, the mid-bass is quite tasteful when it comes to instrumentals, most especially percussion instruments such as kick drums, which give a satisfying slow punch. But do not mistake the mid-bass for being sluggish. Despite the boominess, it does not exhibit muddiness or fuzziness since the sub-bass has been kept under control. The V10 Pro emphasizes the mid-bass over the sub-bass, but not lacking in bass extension. Though, because of the mid-bass emphasis, the rumbling sensation is subdued. Again, I wish the mid-bass was tucked and the bass bleed minimized for the sub-bass to have more presence. But it does not mean that the mid-bass does not provide an enjoyable experience. Though it is not especially snappy or punchy, the mid-bass delivers a hall-like effect to the replay. Percussion instruments and harmonics are given more weight. The mid-range isn't recessed despite the bass bleed, which instead elevates the mid-range. Percussion instruments for me have the perfect volume, but do not sound tonally correct. Bass guitars are more attenuated and moved forward into the stage, which gives it more of a nasal presentation. The V10 Pro may give bass heads a satisfying resolution, but in my opinion, won't be enough because it isn't boomy enough or rumbly enough. Because of this, the bass perfectly balances and takes center stage to the rest of the frequencies. Though, there is something to be talked about, the upper mid-range. Even if I hail the TRN V10 Pro as the budget endgame, the IM I would have stopped with at the very beginning, it's not without its faults, which does make the attribute budget make sense. The upper mid-range is properly matched to the bass for adequate clarity. The upper treble and air are attenuated to counteract the boominess and warmth that comes from the mid-bass, but these frequency regions exhibit peakiness, occasional nasalness, and overexcitedness. Still, there is great merit for the V10 Pro in the treble region. Many listeners who are perhaps used to a more exciting or bright or Harman sound signature will find the V10 Pro to be less engaging and even vocal recessed at low to medium volumes. But the V10 Pro shines more as it scales. I was able to listen up to 80% without complaints, but it isn't perfectly scalable as it loses its composure above 80% in my listening experience, and the ultra budget characteristics would show. Indeed, at the safe listening volume, I found the vocals to be adequately engaging without being shouty, but at higher volumes, more instances of attenuated sibilance and peakiness would reveal itself. This also affects the vocal tone, which seems to be inconsistent as the pitch of the voice rises. Because of this, vocals don't sound smooth, but do sound sharp and quite nuanced, which boosts its technical and resolving ability. I am very satisfied with how the TRN V10 Pro brought out the tiny details of Nolu's voice, specifically in the song Ifu Dodo, which made her vocal fry very addicting to listen to. I repeated that part of the song more times than I'd like to admit. However, my problem with the V10 Pro is nasally and slightly boxy vocals. As following the characteristic of a scaling beast, the V10 Pro leaves no detail, macro or micro, undiscovered. Even if I thought that I'd listened to a song several times enough to know it front and back, it always felt like the V10 Pro revealed and pushed more of those details that were only in the subconsciousness listening into the consciousness listening. This also applies to the lower mid-range and the mid-mids, which sounds rich and full. In my opinion, the V10 Pro has struck a great but not consistent balance of musicality and technicality. Its imaging is sharp. Soundstage width is average, but the soundstage depth is a price range above. But what it does amazingly is its scalability. To my ears, I never found the V10 Pro to be shouty, only peaky, making it an unrefined sounding IEM. To me, the V10 Pro is a diamond in the rough, and I hope TRN will improve upon this sound signature and manage to release another at a similar price range. Sound aside, I hope TRN would stop using this horrible rubber band-like cable to its new budget IEMs, which also has been packaged with their newest IEM, the TRN MT5. The V10 Pro is for those who are sensitive to the vocal region and for those who don't like an exaggerated pin gain. To my ears, a balanced with mid-bass and treble presence emphasis sound signature. Once again, there are caveats to the V10 Pro, mainly the rough and peaky treble. But this is an IEM that shouldn't be slept on, despite it being in the budget price range. Honestly, I'm still impressed by the V10 Pro and will not stop listening to it until another similarly tuned budget IEM comes by, which I suspect to be very far in the future. This IEM is also a good reference point in my opinion, for someone to figure out their sound preference. Perhaps they like a more engaging sound, a more bright sound, or maybe less of a pin gain sound. I wish this IEM released earlier, so I would have not gone through the trouble of buying countless budget IEMs. But the V10 Pro perhaps would be a good stepping point to a more expensive and more refined IEM with a similar sound signature. But the V10 Pro is not for someone who prioritizes the upper mid-range energy, vocals, or a person who wants an exciting sound signature such as V-shape or Harman. I won't say that this is comparable to higher priced endgame sets, as I do not have the comparisons or experiences to do so. But if you could permit me, this is an excellent candidate for someone's budget endgame. Thank you very much for listening to my review, and I hope it was helpful. Please feel free to leave any comments, questions, and feedback for the video. Now, it's time to gain out!